Have you ever chased a goal with burning determination only to feel, once you finally reached it, an odd emptiness, like a silence louder than triumph? You thought that achievement would set you free, that success would calm the restless fire in your chest, but instead, it left behind a hollow echo. You asked yourself, why does victory sometimes taste like ash? Why does motivation, the very fuel that carries you forward, feel so strangely deceptive? Imagine this. You wake up one morning electrified by purpose. You tell yourself, I will finally do it. I will transform my life, achieve my dream, conquer my fears. Every fiber of your being is aligned with the vision. And yet, if you listen carefully, beneath the thunder of your drive, beneath the glowing image of success, you might hear another voice, a whisper, something unsettling. Something like, what if you're not chasing the dream, but running from something else? That whisper unnerves you, doesn't it? Because if you dare to admit it, you begin to wonder, perhaps your motivation is not pure. Perhaps your fire isn't born only of noble passion, but also of shadows you've buried, fears of worthlessness, unhealed wounds, desires you would never speak aloud. Carl Jung once wrote, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. And maybe, without realizing it, you have been disguising your shadow as motivation. Think about how often you have said, I want to succeed, I want to be strong, I want to be admired. On the surface, these declarations shine with positivity. But what if behind them lurks a darker current? I am terrified of being a failure. I am ashamed of my weakness. I fear being invisible. Do you see the paradox? Your positive drive may not be a beacon of freedom at all. It might be the mask your hidden fears wear to move you like a puppet. And so you ask yourself, who is really in control? Is it the conscious you striving for greatness, or the unconscious shadow manipulating your every move? Picture this, the athlete who pushes beyond all limits, not because she loves running, but because she cannot bear the silence of feeling unworthy. The entrepreneur who builds an empire, not because he is free, but because he is enslaved by the fear of being insignificant. The artist who creates masterpiece after masterpiece, not from pure joy, but from a desperate hunger for validation. Their motivation glitters in the eyes of others, but in the stillness of night, when the world is quiet, their victories feel fragile, even poisoned. And now, the unsettling question, what about you? Could it be that the goals you chase, the dreams you burn for, are not as pure as you believe? Could it be that the very thing you worship, your motivation, is secretly the handcuff keeping you from true freedom? This is the great deception. You think you are free because you are moving, striving, climbing, but perhaps you are only running in the labyrinth of your own shadow. You think you are chasing the light, but maybe you are only fleeing the darkness behind you. And if that is true, then what does it mean for your victories, your identity, your life itself? You feel the weight of the question pressing in, don't you? The unsettling possibility that what you trusted as your highest ally might be your most cunning deceiver. And so you stand at the edge of a precipice, peering into the mystery. If motivation is not pure, if behind it hides your shadow, then you must dare to ask, what is truly moving you? That is where the journey begins, and it will take you deeper into the hidden roots of your psyche, into the history of philosophy and psychology, into the very machinery of society that has shaped your desires. The next step is not comfortable, but necessary, to uncover the hidden problem and its roots. Why does this deception exist at all? Why would something as sacred seeming as motivation, the very spark that moves you out of inertia, be infiltrated by shadow, by repressed fears and hidden desires? To answer that, you must step into the depths of psychology, philosophy, and the silent architecture of society that has shaped you since before you were even aware. Think of your childhood. You were born with raw impulses, hunger, curiosity, rage, longing. Yet from the first cries, you were taught which parts of yourself were good and which were bad. When you smiled, you were praised. When you raged, you were punished. When you dreamed wildly, some dreams were encouraged, others dismissed as foolish. And so, slowly, a division formed inside you, the acceptable self and the unacceptable self. Jung called the latter the shadow, those rejected parts of you that once denied did not vanish but sank into the unconscious. But here is the paradox. The more you repress, the more power the shadow gains. Nietzsche once warned, beware that, when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster. What he meant is that the things you exile within you do not die, they transform. They find disguises. They sneak back into your life, not openly, but under masks. And one of their most brilliant masks is motivation. When you say, I want to be successful, it sounds noble. But if you peel back the words, you may find the repressed cry of I fear being worthless. When you declare, I want to be admired, beneath it may hide the wound of I cannot love myself as I am. You present one face to the world, but another face lurks within. This is the hidden root of the great deception. And it is not only psychology, it is also philosophy. Consider the existentialists, who observed that much of human striving arises not from love of life, but from the terror of death, insignificance, and absurdity. Sartre spoke of bad faith, the self-deception in which you convince yourself that your actions are free, when in truth they are dictated by forces you refuse to acknowledge. Is this not the same pattern at play in your motivation? You tell yourself you are moving toward freedom, but perhaps you are only avoiding confrontation with your shadow. Now look outward to society. From the moment you entered school, you were measured, compared, ranked. Gold stars, grades, applause, these were not neutral. They trained your nervous system. You learned to link worth with achievement. You absorbed the myth that only constant striving would justify your existence. By the time you became an adult, the world's values had already colonized your inner landscape. The advertisements whispered, you are not enough by this. Become that. The workplace thundered, climb higher, be faster, prove yourself. Even your relationships often mirrored this conditioning, rewarding you when you were somebody and withholding when you faltered. Is it any wonder, then, that your motivation often carries the fingerprints of fear, shame, and unmet hunger? How could it be otherwise when your very sense of identity was built atop the repression of your shadow? Think of a mirror. On its surface, you see a confident smile, burning ambition, clear goals. But behind the mirror on its hidden side, there is dust, cracks, stains. You have been taught to polish only the visible surface, never to look behind. And yet, it is precisely that unseen side that gives shape to your reflection. Here lies the hidden problem. Motivation, which should be the pure flame of life, is too often the candle burning inside a cage built of your own denials. You think you are choosing freely, but in truth, your shadow is choosing for you. And if that is the case, then every victory you win has a silent price. Because what you gain in applause, you lose in authenticity. What you achieve in the world, you risk forfeiting in the soul. You begin to sense the deeper consequence. If your shadow manipulates your striving, then even when you succeed, you are still trapped. You are no closer to freedom, only deeper inside an invisible prison. The stakes are higher than you realized. Because if motivation is a mask for repression, then the life you build upon it may be nothing more than an elaborate disguise. And sooner or later, the disguise cracks. The emptiness after achievement, the depression beneath success, the anxiety that no triumph ever silences, these are not accidents. They are signs of the shadow at work. And so the question sharpens. If the roots of your motivation are entwined with fear, repression, and social conditioning, what kind of fruit will such roots bear? This leads you to the next stage of the journey, where the mask begins to fall away And you witness not only the hidden roots, but the unseen consequences that shape the very fabric of your life. You thought the problem was simply personal, that your motivation might carry hidden wounds. But as you peel away the layers, you begin to see something more disturbing. These hidden forces do not just shape your private struggles, they silently construct the world around you. Imagine standing in a crowded city. Every person you see, rushing to work, scrolling through their phone, pushing their body at the gym, striving for applause on social media, is animated by motivation. Yet beneath the glossy surfaces, how much of this energy is driven not by freedom, but by fear? How much of society's movement is not true creation, but shadow projection on a massive scale? Cognitive science gives you a clue. Researchers show that much of human decision-making is driven by unconscious biases. The status quo bias that keeps you clinging to the familiar, even when it harms you. The scarcity bias that makes you chase more because you fear lack. The social proof effect that makes you desire what others already desire. You believe your motivation is rational, but it is often a dance choreographed by these hidden mechanisms. And when multiplied by millions of people, these individual shadows create collective illusions. Think of the endless pursuit of wealth. On the surface, it looks like progress, ambition, success. But behind it often hides a terror of poverty, of being seen as less. Think of the obsession with physical perfection. It glows as health and discipline, but beneath it festers shame and fear of rejection. Even the noble pursuit of knowledge can be infected. How many intellectuals write not to illuminate truth, but to bury their insecurity beneath brilliance? The consequence is a culture built on restless striving, where even achievement does not bring peace. You live in a world that praises productivity, yet secretly bleeds from exhaustion. You scroll through platforms filled with curated success stories, but beneath each glowing post often lies anxiety, loneliness, and hidden despair. And so, what you experience privately, the emptiness after victory, is magnified into a social epidemic. Depression after achievement, burnout after success, anxiety in the midst of privilege. The very systems meant to reward motivation are quietly devouring the spirit. But the shadow's influence runs even deeper. Neuropsychology tells us that when you repress parts of yourself, your brain must spend constant energy to keep them buried. This creates chronic stress, subtle fatigue, and a sense of disconnection. It is as if your inner world is divided, and every achievement must pass through this fracture. No matter how far you run, part of you remains exiled, demanding to be heard. And perhaps you feel it, that strange tension in your chest when you succeed but still feel incomplete. That unshakable doubt when you compare yourself to others. That voice that whispers, "Is this really who I am? Or am I only playing a role demanded by unseen forces?" Philosophers knew this danger well. Kierkegaard wrote of the sickness unto death, the despair of not being one's true self, of living as a mask. And this is exactly the consequence of shadow-driven motivation. You may achieve the world's rewards, but lose yourself in the process. You may build an identity that shines on the outside while secretly crumbling within. The urgency becomes clear. This is not a small deception, but a foundational trap. If you live your entire life fueled by shadowed motivation, you may never truly meet yourself. You may die having conquered mountains, yet never having stood on your own authentic ground. Look at the patterns repeating around you. The successful who are secretly miserable, the admired who feel hollow, the powerful who remain haunted. Their shadows have built empires, but their souls remain in exile. And perhaps you recognize a reflection of your own journey in theirs. Do you see now how the unseen consequences stretch beyond your personal story into the collective? A society that mistakes shadow-driven striving for freedom is a society addicted to illusion. It grows richer yet emptier, faster yet more lost, connected yet profoundly lonely. And you are part of this story, not as a passive victim, but as an active participant whose shadow both shapes and is shaped by the whole. The question presses harder. If this is true, if motivation can silently enslave you, then how do you break free? How do you reclaim sovereignty over your own life, when every force from your childhood to culture itself has trained you to mistake shadows for light? The tension rises. You can feel the trap tightening. But there is also a spark of possibility, the sense that rebellion is not only necessary, but possible. What happens when you finally see the trap? When you recognize that so much of your motivation, your drive, your hunger, even your victories, has been shadow in disguise? A quiet fury awakens inside you, a rebellion, because you realize that if you do not break free, you will live a life scripted by fears you never chose, and you refuse to remain a puppet of your unconscious. But here's the paradox. You cannot fight the shadow the way you would fight an enemy. The more you resist it, the stronger it becomes. Remember Jung's warning. What you resist not only persists, but grows. So the rebellion cannot be external conquest. It must be an inner revolution. The first act of rebellion is radical honesty. You must dare to admit to yourself what you have long hidden, that behind your hunger for admiration lies a wound of unworthiness, that your obsession with achievement masks a terror of invisibility, that your desire to always appear strong conceals a fear of being broken. This honesty burns. It feels like death, because part of your identity, your heroic self-image, begins to dissolve. Yet only by facing the shadow do you reclaim the power you once gave away. The second act is redefinition. You must begin to ask, what do I want when no one is watching? What would I choose if I were not driven by fear? At first, the answers may terrify you. Perhaps you discover that the empire you wanted to build was never your dream, but your father's shadow passed on to you. Perhaps you realize that your constant striving for recognition was only society's voice echoing through your bones. To rebel means to risk everything to let false dreams collapse so authentic ones can emerge. History offers you examples of those who dared this rebellion. Socrates, who refused to live unexamined, even at the cost of death. Nietzsche, who shattered conventional morality to declare, "You must become who you are." Gandhi, who renounced wealth and status to embody truth. Their lives were not comfortable, but they were free. They remind you that rebellion is not the absence of struggle, it is the presence of authenticity. The third act of rebellion is integration. You cannot destroy your shadow, but you can embrace it. You can sit with your fear of failure and realize it has been protecting you, urging you to grow. You can acknowledge your longing for admiration and recognize it as a cry for connection. Integration means you no longer exile these parts of yourself. You listen, you learn, you transform them into allies. This is the alchemy of the psyche, turning fear into wisdom, shame into compassion, longing into creativity. And here lies the counterintuitive truth. The moment you embrace your shadow, motivation transforms. It is no longer the restless fire of running away. It becomes the steady flame of moving toward. You are no longer chasing success to hide your wounds. You are creating because creation itself is your joy. You are no longer climbing to prove your worth. You are walking your path because it is yours alone. Do you feel the power in that shift? Suddenly, the applause of others matters less. The comparisons lose their grip. The emptiness after achievement dissolves, because achievement is no longer a mask, but a byproduct of authenticity. This is sovereignty, to no longer be moved like a puppet by unconscious fears, but to act from the depth of your being. And yet, rebellion is not a one-time act, it is a daily practice. Every day, society will tempt you to fall back into illusion, to chase shadows instead of truth. Every day, your unconscious will whisper its old stories. But now you know, and knowing gives you the power to choose differently. Imagine this new way of living. You wake not with the frantic hunger of proving yourself, but with the quiet joy of exploring who you are. Your goals are not dictated by fear of failure, but by love of becoming. Your victories do not taste of ash, but of wholeness. This rebellion is not glamorous. It requires courage, vulnerability, and patience. But it is the only path that leads to true freedom. Because in rebelling against the deception of motivation, you are not merely rejecting a lie, you are reclaiming your life. And yet, even as you taste this newfound sovereignty, a deeper question remains. Beyond rebellion, beyond integration, beyond authenticity, what is the ultimate truth? What lies at the very heart of existence, once the deception has been unmasked? You have rebelled. You have looked your shadow in the eyes, stripped away illusions, and reclaimed the sovereignty that was hidden beneath fear. But still, a question lingers. Is there something beyond even this? Beyond shadow, beyond rebellion, beyond the constant dance of striving and breaking free? The answer arrives not as a thunderclap, but as a whisper quiet, unsettling, liberating. The ultimate truth is this: motivation itself was never the essence of your being. Have you noticed that when you are deeply present, when you are lost in a sunrise, in music, in love, you do not feel motivated in the ordinary sense? You are not striving, not calculating, not chasing. You are simply being. In that state, action flows effortlessly, without the whip of fear or the carrot of desire. The river moves, and you move with it. This is the secret. Motivation, shadowed or pure, belongs to the realm of the ego. It is the mind's way of controlling, of securing, of making life into a project. But your essence is not a project, it is a mystery. When you no longer seek to escape your shadow or to prove your worth, what remains is not motivation, but something deeper, aliveness itself. Philosophers have hinted at this for centuries. The Taoists spoke of wu-wei action without forcing, flowing with the current of existence. Meister Eckhart wrote, "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me." What does this mean, if not that the deepest truth is unity, that the striving self and the world it strives within are not separate? And Jung himself suggested that individuation, the integration of the shadow, ultimately leads to the realization of wholeness, where all opposites dissolve. And here is the great irony. When you stop being obsessed with motivation, when you let go of both the shadow-driven hunger and the rebellion against it, you discover a freedom beyond striving. You act not because you must, but because life itself acts through you. Imagine walking into your day no longer asking, "What do I need to achieve to be enough?" but instead feeling, "I am already whole, and from this wholeness, I create, I love, I live." Your goals may remain, but they are lighter, playful, no longer chains around your soul. Success does not enslave you, and failure does not destroy you. You are no longer defined by what you chase or what you escape. This is the final realization. You are never truly lacking, never broken, never in need of proving yourself through relentless striving. The shadow deceived you into believing you were incomplete, and motivation disguised itself as salvation. But beneath the layers of illusion, you find something astonishingly simple: you are already enough. And yet, this truth is not an ending, but a beginning. Because once you know you are whole, life becomes not a desperate climb, but an open horizon. You can choose to create, to strive, to explore, but now as an expression of freedom, not a symptom of fear. Picture yourself standing at the edge of the ocean at night. The waves crash, the stars blaze, the vastness humbles you. In that moment, you do not feel the need to prove, to strive, to achieve. You feel the raw truth. You are part of this immensity, inseparable from it. Your shadow is part of you, yes, but it is only one note in the vast symphony of your being. And so, the deception of motivation dissolves. The shadow is not your enemy, it is your teacher. Motivation is not your salvation. It is your disguise. The ultimate freedom is not to conquer the shadow, nor to glorify motivation, but to step beyond both into the luminous simplicity of being alive. Here the journey leaves you with no easy conclusion, only a call to reflect. What has truly been moving me? What am I ready to release? What might it feel like to act not from fear, not from hunger, but from wholeness? The answer cannot be given to you. It must be lived. And perhaps that is the final paradox. The greatest truth is not found in striving, but in the silence that remains when striving falls away. So you walk forward, not finished, not complete, but awake carrying a question that will echo through every step of your life. What would it mean if you no longer needed to be motivated at all?